Okay. My name is Jessica Quarless. I'm an attorney specializing in employment law at Jackson Lewis PC. I'm originally from California and now I'm out in Chicago, Illinois. And I'm really excited to talk with you all and kind of lead you through a similar journey as I did going through law school.
Hi, guys, and welcome back to Dream Secured Mentoring Network. I'm Dr. Jessica, founder and primary mentor for our network. I'm very, very excited to talk today with attorney Jessica Quarless. She is giving us information on her journey to becoming an attorney and how she got to where she is today. Again, this series is So You Want to Be a ... The blank we're filling in today is So You Want to Be an Attorney. Jessica, thanks for being with us today. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to steer the folks in the right direction.
Yay! I'm very excited too. So I guess we can just kind of dive right into it. So you are an attorney located where? What type of law do you practice? And then we'll backtrack to how you got to where you are now.
Okay. I work at a firm downtown in Chicago, Illinois, called Jackson Lewis PC, and our firm only does employment law, labor relations, things of that nature. So I do a little bit of labor side work, but primarily just employment defense. So we're working on behalf of employers with issues they may be having with their workforce.
Awesome. So how long have you been with this firm?
I actually started there while I was in law school. I was a summer associate for one summer in between my second and third year. And then I came back after I took the bar in California, worked in that office for a year. And then when I came out to Chicago, I just continued with the firm. So 2 years, almost 3 as an associate, and then a little in summer.
Awesome. All right. So back then, before attorney Jessica came into play, tell us is this something that you've always wanted to do with your life? Did you know this as a child that you wanted to become an attorney? What was that journey like for you?
Well, I was always really interested in school, just learning new things. I also knew that I wanted to have a certain standard of living. So for that to happen, I kind of looked at careers that would suit my skill sets. And I have a couple uncles who are attorneys. And that was always, really celebrated in our family and within our community. So it's definitely something that piqued my interest as I was growing up. And then in college, I took, a couple legal classes here and there to fulfill my business degree. And I was just interested in it and looked into it and just got the ball rolling to pursue it.
Awesome. So in undergrad, you majored in business?
Yes.
Okay. So 4-year degree, majoring in business, and then went into law school. What was that process to get into law school? So did you need certain undergrad, pre-grad classes? Did you have to take any type of exams, interviews, anything like that?
Yeah. There's no prerequisite as far as what you have to study in your undergrad degree, so long as you have that bachelor's degree. You can apply and attend law school. There is a big test, the Lsat, that you have to sit for, and obviously depending on what your score is, that'll kind of unlock the doors to different ranked schools. So I did that my last semester while I was in undergrad, where I was studying for the Lsat, because it's a really intensive test that tests you on several different ways of learning, how you retain information. So I did that and then waited for my scores, looking at my scores, determine what schools I could go to, what schools were best for me based on where I was living and financially. And then used to apply. My school didn't have in-person interviews. I know some other schools do, particularly those that are really highly ranked. In addition to the LSAT and the application process, you have an in-person, but maybe now Zoom interview because of the world. And yeah, I got a couple acceptances and stayed in San Diego.
Cool. So, okay. So the LSAT looks more so at how you learn and then how you apply that information into a particular setting. Or
Yeah, there's different aspects of it that I really hadn't encountered in other tests that I've taken. So there's an essay part where you kind of read like a fact scenario and respond to that. A logical reasoning skills, like a games portion to see how you deduce information. Um,
was there
it's a
math?
difficult
That's what
test.
I want to know.
Oh, I can't remember if there's math.
Yeah.
If there was, I kind of blocked it out.
Yes, that's fine. Totally understand. Okay. All right. So you went through the process of studying for LSAT. How long did it take you to kind of study for that exam? Do you recall?
I spent at least 2 months studying, but during that time, I think I was still finishing up my degree and also working full time. So it was just a real blur. But I would suggest to anyone who's thinking about taking the LSAT to find a really good program that'll suit you. I would plan to dedicate 2 solid months at least to studying to get the best score possible.
Yeah, that's really, really good advice. I think across the board, any of those entry exams, for pharmacy, PCAT, MCAT, for medical school, even GRE,
Right.
those things, you really, at least 2 months of hardcore studying, not falling asleep in the book.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, I did that a few times. That's okay. All right, so law school, what was that experience like for you? So how long is law school, and what were your best times, worst times?
So law school traditionally is 3 years with the summers off. My school also had a part-time option, and I know several schools do, where it could take like 4 years, maybe a little over 4 years to finish your degree. I mean, and it's intense throughout the time. The classes, especially your first year, which we call your 1L year, just adjusting to that different Socratic way of learning, it can be really intense, and it's a lot of reading. And your reading speed will pick up as you go through school, but that first year, the first semester, it can be a really tough adjustment. Luckily, I didn't have to work, and most students don't work, but there are some students who have to work, and I know that can be a real challenge. But once you get acclimated, I found it wasn't that bad, and you really have to figure out, because it's such an investment, even if you get a scholarship, it's such an investment in your time that you really just want to make the most of it. Different clubs and different jobs and things like that. But while you're doing all of that, you have to be cognizant of how it's going to be beneficial to you in the long run. So for me, like, I joined our Black Student Union, went to those meetings because maintaining that connection with my culture was still really important to me, and making sure that Black students were succeeding. That was really important to me. And then I knew that I wanted to become a member of Law Review, which is just the organization on campus that publishes our law review. So we're writing articles, we're reviewing articles, soliciting articles. I knew that I wanted to do that. And there was 2 ways of getting on, either through grades, where I think if you ranked in the top 10% or top 5%, you could automatically get on if you wanted to, or you could write on, where you just write an article based on the prompt that they give you. Luckily, I made it to just the automatic entry with the grade, so that was super important to me, and it took up most of my time between my second and third years. My third year being on the board, being an editor, really time consuming, but it's also one of the best parts because I forged a lot of relationships with people, just being in the law review office all the time and spending so much time working together. It was a really good experience.
Well, you hit a lot of profound points. Number one that stood out was you saying that it's an investment. So I think a lot of times students really go in and they see us on the other end in our professional career, And, they hear us talk about how difficult it was or how time consuming it was, but it really is a great investment into your future. So
Definitely.
that mindset going in is very, very important. And even to, remaining connected to your community is very important. And that you're giving back to the community and being an example. I raise a roof on that. I love it. I
Love
love
us.
it. I know, right? Yes. And then too, I mean, so being a part of the law review and being an
Hmm.
editor, I mean, I can all the reading you guys had to do, all the writing that you have to do, the language of law.
Hmm.
I mean, I commend you. I commend you. It's like learning an
Yeah.
entire new language.
I mean, it really is. Like, even now when I have to write things that are not for work, it's like, oh, let me speak like a normal person now. In particular, for me, I was a part of the board for the International Law Journal. So my articles focused on things happening in the Middle East. So in addition to this whole legalese that I was doing, like doing that between languages and dialects and things like that, it was challenging at some points, but I know I've talked about it in job interviews, and it's some jobs say we don't want you unless you were on law review. So it's things like that. Like when you talk about the investment, it definitely can pay off in the back end.
Wow. Okay. So, you mentioned the networking aspect
Mm-hmm.
and how being on law review really allowed you to get to know a lot of different people and make connections with different people. So how important is that networking aspect while you're a student going into your career?
Oh my gosh. I mean, just in being a student in law school, having connections is so important because pretty much everyone makes these outlines for their classes because the testing, 3 hours, closed book, and you just have to retain so much information. And what's gold in law school is a good outline that really summarizes the class. So maintaining those connections in school, in part to keep you sane, just so you can have some fun, but also to get that real capital to go around that makes your life easier when you're studying. And then just what people look for jobs. People need jobs. I've been in situations both where I've cautioned maybe against hiring someone from school and also really encouraged people to hire someone from school. People, they remember, if you were doing well in assignments, they remember if you were slacking off, things like that. And that's definitely obviously carries over into the professional realm. So as much as it's, school, it's you're a junior professional training how to build those skills.
Oh, yes, junior professional. We used to call ourselves junior pharmacists, so I love that. Man, that makes a lot of sense. We usually say that the world of pharmacy is pretty small because
Mm-hmm.
it just seems like everybody knows somebody that knows somebody. And it
Yep,
sounds like you have a similar experience in your field as well. Um,
definitely.
so it's almost like you're interviewing for life, right? When you're in school, because
Mm-hmm.
those things will always come back up later.
Yep,
So, you're in school. What was like, you enjoyed law review, even though it was a lot of work.
it was.
um, what was some of the most challenging aspects of being in law school besides a 3 hour closed book exam?
Mm-hmm.
3 hours. I guess we did have that too, but I can't imagine. So what was some of your
More
more
so.
it's fine. Some of your more difficult things that you experienced in law school, and then how did you overcome that? Or
Obviously,
one
just this
experience.
one experience. Honestly, the first time you have finals, it's so overwhelming because in law school also there's no for most classes no assignments throughout the semester, right? So everything, your entire grade. For me, I had a scholarship too, so it was like whether my scholarship gets renewed is all dependent on the test. So just kind of that anxiety about preparing yourself properly, that was mortifying.
I mean,
But it can
yeah,
go
it
on.
sounds like it. Yeah.
as you
Yeah.
go on, you just get more used to it. You adapt, you learn what works for you, and it gets better.
Awesome. So really understanding how you learn is very,
Hmm.
very
Definitely.
important. Okay.
Yeah,
That
I
makes a
mean,
lot of sense too.
most people like to study in groups, um, which obviously I understand can be really effective to kind of pass the knowledge and test yourself based on how you can answer other people's questions, the questions that you pose to other people. And I really found that I worked best studying by myself. That's the
Mm.
best way I retain information. And so even discovering things like that about yourself and saying like, oh no, I don't want to be in a study group, kind of building up that internal backbone.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that can be scary too, because it's like, I want you guys to be my friends and I want you to
Right,
like me.
right. We just
But
talked about the small
I,
world, right?
yeah, but I mean, I think being honest with yourself about what works best for you is more important, because what's more important than those people liking you is passing your test.
Exactly. Remember, this is an investment, so you want to make sure you get
Exactly.
great return. So, okay, so then what was one of your favorite experiences while in law school? Like, what was the highlight of law school besides graduating?
Uh, actually, my last year of school, like the first part of my 3L year, I had my first Black professor, which was exciting enough. A Black woman, she taught criminal procedure. And obviously, that's really important to understand as a Black person, and especially now, like with everything that's happened in 2020, and how police brutality, police activity has kind of been put to the forefront of everyone's minds, and they can't escape it now. To have a Black woman break down these things and say, like, this was the policy, this was the effect, in a way that made sense to me, in a way that I could really relate to. I was so grateful for that experience. And just getting, because that was like her first semester at the school, and I was just really lucky that I was able to experience that class and learn from her, and I actually had her hood me at graduation. That was nice.
Yes, that I definitely understand the feeling. Definitely, definitely. I had a professor just like that too. When you're able to see someone that looks like you
Mm-hmm.
doing something that you're aspiring to do or that you never thought that you could do, oh,
Right.
let me tell you, the wheels get to rolling. I love it. That is a great. I felt that in my heart. That's a
Mm-hmm.
great experience. So all right. So I do have a question in regards to how you kind of figure out what you want to do as an attorney. So
Mm-hmm.
what is that process like?
For me, a lot of what I've ended up doing has been based on how I was going to pay my bills. Um, to be real, like,
Yeah.
I had a scholarship that covered my tuition, but I still had to survive. So I took out student loans um, during school. But in the summer, when I'm not in school, I still needed to pay my rent. And there's so many jobs for law students that are unpaid. No credit, just slavery almost. Um, so, so
Yeah.
I couldn't. That's not a thing that I could have done. Um, so I went for jobs that paid, and most of those happen to be centered around employment law or have some aspect of employment law in them, even if they were just kind of general litigation or an in-house working for a company. And it's interesting, like, people they're wild. And so it's like you get to read all these facts, and employment law is always changing so rapidly. Every ballot initiative in every state pretty much will have some employment law component to it, even with this presidential election, and thinking, what's Biden's labor board going to do versus Trump, and how all of that affects people's daily lives in ways that they don't even realize. And also it's important in employment law, where there's allegations of discrimination and things like that. Part of it also, since I work for employers only, is to kind of be a sounding board for my clients, to be someone who says, okay, you don't see it this way, but as a person within this group, let me tell you how we see this behavior and things like that. So, in addition to try and be an effective agent for my client, I want to be able to kind of mold the way employers see things, which I think will result in a better environment for, employees and employers.
Wow, yeah. That's you're awesome, man. That's awesome. It's very, very important to have that representation behind those closed doors that you don't even realize that you need.
Mm-hmm.
That's amazing. Jessica Quarless, guys. Okay. So you're doing employment law, and
Mm-hmm.
I never even knew that was. I mean, I guess I did, but like you said,
Right.
Employees, I just go to work.
Right.
Not realizing, but then I think about like EEO claims and
Mm-hmm.
people, making reports in that manner. So that can definitely make sense. I want to go back a little bit to the financial situation while in graduate school, because I
Mm-hmm.
don't think a lot of people are told how to survive when you're in graduate school, because it is your life. Studying is
Mm-hmm.
literally your life. You wake up, you go to sleep, you're studying, and you have some fun on occasion, but for the most part, your entire life is studying. So having the ability to work or having the ability to have a paid experiential opportunity is very slim for a lot of professional programs.
Mm-hmm.
So financial wise, what would you recommend? So, do you have to pay for your board exams when you get out of school? Like when you go for job interviews, do you need to have money to travel to go to these job
Mm-hmm.
interviews? Because getting by with, enough to pay your rent is pretty much it,
Real. Yeah.
So what are the financial demands outside of student loans and rent? What are those kind of things that you didn't realize you would have to pay for, but they hit you,
Right. Well, I mean, to start with, to study for the LSAT, like if you do one of the well-known programs, it's several $100s.
Mm-hmm.
So the costs start immediately. There is a fee for the LSAT. If I remember correctly, you can apply to have that waived. And that'll also allow you to send a certain number of scores out to schools, because there's also a fee for that. And in terms of, I just want to sidetrack really quickly, in terms of picking schools, getting a scholarship was important to me just because I already had student loans from undergrad and I didn't want to get too deep into debt if I didn't know what my job prospects were going to be like. That's important. That being said, if you can go to a great school that at graduation will get you a job making several times more than what you could, and that school ranking is a barrier to getting that job, I would not ignore the loans, but be forward thinking in that regard. So that's number one. But yeah, finding jobs that pay enough was super important. Books for law school were really expensive. $300 and $400 for a book. Mm-hmm. And so my student loans covered most of that, but it is a cost. So I know, that's why I said I know a number of people who worked part-time because they just couldn't afford to not do that. And then in the summers, I would just encourage you, if you're not taking classes, to work as efficiently as you can to find jobs within the field that you're interested in. See if there's any that pay, reach out, developing that network, because, people might say, oh, I know so-and-so is looking for a summer associate and they're paying. It's really important to just kind of keep your ear to the ground to find things, because everything costs. Sitting for the bar costs, submitting your application to sit for the bar costs, the background check costs. And for me, my firm, because I got an offer between my second and third year, they paid for the bar, which was really great, because that was like almost $1,000. And then I already had that guaranteed stream of income. I know other places, depending on the firm, they might fly you out for an interview if you're not where that location is, and kind of expense your trip there. But otherwise, if it's just you going out to these interviews, you have to pay for everything. It can be really expensive.
Yeah. I definitely would recommend for someone that's in their graduate program or about to start their graduate program, start a savings account and don't touch it. And if
start a savings account.
Go ahead. Yeah.
And scholarships. There's a ton of scholarships that you can apply for all types of things all throughout law school. And applications can be long and tedious, but to save you that money, I feel like, even for a smaller scholarship, maybe a few $1,000s, it's really important.
It's worth it. It's totally worth it. Anything you can knock off of your future debt.
Guess who's knocking on my door every month?
Every month. Well, thank God there's a federal deferment, but let me tell you something. Malone didn't go anywhere. Awesome. Okay, so you start your job. It's your first day. What was that like?
It's kind of terrifying, right? Especially the first time you interface with clients, particularly when you don't have a partner or a more senior associate holding your hand. It can be really nerve-wracking because you don't want to say the wrong thing. You don't want to give them poor advice. It was also exhilarating, wow, I do know this thing that I've been studying for years, and I am prepared. So there's a little bit of that self-doubt, but I don't know, just really exciting, at least for me.
Yeah, I think it's good to have a little bit of self-doubt when you first start, because you don't want to go in and be just loud and wrong.
Right. As so many people are.
Yes, you're very, yeah. So, all right. So you were the associate attorney, correct? Is that correct? So does that mean anything as that title, or are there steps because you're 2.5, 3 years in, so you're really, really new.
Right.
So what are kind of the career steps that are ahead of you?
In my firm, we only have associates and principals. Principals are partners. And there's no differentiation between me, someone who is really green, really junior in their career, and someone who's been an associate for 8 years. So associates, we have a billable hour requirement, which is the time that we're dedicating to matters. And we just bill that time, we get our salary, a bonus at the end of the year if we meet certain criteria. And then my firm does a bonus or a percentage of whatever the fees in that you bring in for clients that you bring to the firm. After that, there's the principal level, and we have 2 types of principals there. Income principal, which is the first level, and then equity principal, which I think at that point you buy into the firm. And so obviously those require a certain years of knowledge, a certain book of business, your own clients and revenue that you're generating for the firm. And then once you get to that equity level, some type of investment, I think.
Oh, okay. Awesome. Because you always hear, I don't want to quote any TV shows that I've seen, but I know everyone is like, I'm a partner or whatever the case may be. So I just wonder, okay, well, what, I'm really just thinking about Molly from Insecure.
Remember what we said about being loud and wrong?
I know. Okay. Molly's gonna have her life together next season.
Right.
Prayerfully. So, okay. So is this kind of like what's your career goal? Where do you want to see yourself? I feel like I'm interviewing you for a job now. Where do you see yourself in the next 5 to 10 years? But seriously, where do you want your career to go?
Honestly, I think I see myself moving into an in-house role, which would be working in a company for one client, as opposed to doing litigation, defending lawsuits, defending charges of discrimination, things like that. I think my interests, my skill sets would be better served with one client that I'm helping consistently versus, the 50, whatever number of clients that I have now. But to do that, you need a certain number of years. A lot of people like nationally recognized firms, which my firm is. So that's another investment, right? In my time, even though ultimately I don't think at this point that I want to do litigation forever. It's just a step that you have to go through for me to be in-house.
Okay. And then just explain litigation. You explained being in-house very well. So litigation in terms of what you do every day. So what's that like for you?
So that's resolving lawsuits, resolving charges of discrimination filed at the EEOC or at the state agencies. And that's different from the lawyering where, primarily they're working on contracts. They're not going into court. They're not doing things like that. It's more negotiating, writing deals, things like that. I'm involved. We do a little bit of advice and counsel for our clients regarding, employment laws and things like that. But our primary force in my firm is going to court. Okay, there's already an issue with an employee. Solve this. There's already a lawsuit. Solve this. Or we're trying to prevent a lawsuit. Step in here. So everything that we do is kind of centered around the courts and resolving those claims.
Okay. And so are you going to court like once a week, or are you like, how is that? Well, Zoom
it really
court?
I'm not sure. We do have Zoom court. Some courts have an actual Zoom. Other courts it's just by telephone. And before the lockdowns, before COVID, I mean, even now, when you go physically into court, it really just depends on what your caseload is. Sometimes it can be really heavy, and a lot of your matters will have court hearings around the same time, or, the same block of time. And then you can have weeks where it's just, you don't have anything, but maybe you have depositions or, mediations and settlements and things like that. The schedule can really, really fluctuate.
Okay, so you never know. You kind of know what you're gonna get, but then okay.
It's like
well,
where you get a new matter. Yeah, I mean, you could get a new matter from a client and they have a hearing tomorrow, and all of a sudden you have to go. So,
Lord. Okay. So, I mean, that sounds very exciting, and I commend you.
Thank you.
Commend you. Okay, so I think we've kind of really went from undergrad to graduate school to saving money, realizing this is a great investment in your future because you knew you wanted a certain lifestyle. I think people, one thing I really talk to a lot of students about is lifestyle. How do you want to live your life when you are an adult? Like, is the amount of student loans as vast as it would be if you weren't living and being paid enough to actually afford to pay those loans? I use afford pretty loosely, but but it sounds like you enjoy what you do. It sounds like it's fulfilling for you at this point in your career, but that you have some great aspirations in regards to where you want to move forward. So, I really want to, if you would leave the listeners or the viewers with words of wisdom that you may wish you would have had or that you have for them going forward in life.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing I think is just perseverance, being able to look forward into what you want your life to be like, how you want to live. And obviously you can't plan for everything, right? But to have a concrete plan, I knew I didn't just want to end with my bachelor's degree because that would severely limit me in the jobs that I could take. And I'm also just a curious person. So to have this kind of in-depth knowledge in a field is really interesting, right? So even when it gets difficult, expensive, when you want to tear your hair out in law school, just to keep looking forward, keep thinking of, okay, well, where am I seeing myself in 10 years and what do I have to do to get there? You know, what's the best way that I can work efficiently and enjoy myself still, because you still have a life to live outside of, you know, whatever you do for work. So just kind of savoring each moment, thoughtfully crafting your next step, and really trying to find ways to live authentically so you can be happy and enjoy the journey as it goes on.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
I greatly appreciate you taking the time out of, I know you have a very busy schedule. So this is gonna wrap up for our conversation with Jessica Quarless, attorney in employee law.
Mm-hmm.
I want to be like, anyway, I don't want to say Maxine Shaw, attorney at law, but but I really appreciate it. Again, this is Dream Secured Mentoring Network. I'm Dr. Jessica, primary mentor and founder of Dream Secured Mentoring. If you guys have questions or you want to get in contact with Jessica, how can students reach you?
It's best to reach me by email since I'm not super active on socials. And my email is Jessica Quarless, QUARLESS @gmail. Another way you can reach me is LinkedIn. If you just search my first and last name, it's not many of us. And I work at Jackson Lewis in Chicago.
Awesome. And guys, you can always email me at secure.dream@gmail.com or message me on Instagram at Dream Secured Mentoring. And I'll definitely be able to get you in contact with Jessica, whatever the case may be. So again, thank you for your time. I can't thank you enough. And guys, that's another wrap for So You Want to Be a ... Today we filled in the blank about being an attorney for employee law. See you next time.
Thank you.